Talia.
Where are you going? I asked, sitting up straighter as I watched Luciano put on his jacket. Lucille and I were currently on the couch, going over some of her vocabulary when Luciano went out of the room, all dressed up. We decided to have our date in the afternoon because Grandpa Ferry had to attend to something this morning, and there was no one else to take care of Lucille. I'm heading to the town to look for something, he said. I raised my eyebrows. And what might that be? A good restaurant, he smiled. I'm also planning on buying some flowers along the way. Can I come with you, Daddy? Lucille asked, bouncing up and down on her seat. Luciano apologetically smiled as he ruffled her hair. I'm sorry, Princess. You're just going to get tired since I'll be walking around. I'll make sure to buy you some chocolates, though. Is that all right? She nodded her head. He then went closer to me and placed a kiss on my head. My car ran out of gas today, he sheepishly said. Can you meet me at the plaza at around 5 p.m.? I nodded my head. That's all right with me. Let's meet by the station, he said. Okay. See you later. See you, he placed a quick kiss on my lips. Wear something warm, okay? I nodded my head. I'm looking forward to it. He smiled and broke away from our hug. He placed his wallet in his pocket before waving his hands goodbye. I held on to Lucille and waved at him goodbye too. Your dad's planning a lot for this date, I gushed to my daughter. She giggled and leaned back against my chest. That's because Daddy loves you, Mommy. Do you love him too? Of course I do, I told her. I love the two of you more than anything in the entire world. Asterisk. I thought you were going on a date today. Grandpa Ferry asked as I put on my scarf. Yup, I enthusiastically nodded. Where's Luciano then? Oh, he's already in town, I smiled. He told me to meet him there, so I'm going to go now. He didn't say anything and just kept looking at me with a concerned look on his face. I stopped in my tracks and looked at him. Is there anything you'd like to say, Grandpa? The worried look on his face quickly morphed into a smile. It's nothing. Make sure to stay safe, okay? I heard that it's quite cold outside tonight. I will, I nodded my head. Goodbye for now. Goodbye. I went out of the house and started walking towards the plaza. It wasn't that far from our house, so I just took it as a time to unwind and relax. After a couple of minutes, I finally arrived at the plaza station where Luciano and I were supposed to meet. I glanced at my watch and saw that there were still 20 minutes until our designated waiting time. I was about to sit down on one of the benches, but when I saw a pregnant lady waddling over, I immediately gave up my seat for her. Instead, I sat up and looked around the place, rubbing my hands together to create some friction. I blew some air into the wind and shivered when I saw a stream of white fog come out of my mouth. Damn. They weren't lying when they said that tonight was going to be cold. It's a good thing I dressed warmly as Luciano instructed me to. I quietly waited for Luciano, looking at my phone from time to time to see whether he had sent me a text or not. It was getting closer and closer to our designated meeting time, yet he was still to make his presence known. The pregnant woman had now boarded a bus, and she smiled at me as she went inside. I didn't bother sitting on the bench she left vacant, though, because I couldn't stop fidgeting while waiting for Luciano. Since it was nearing December, the skies grew darker at a much earlier time, and even now, nearing 5 p.m., the skies were already showing an orange tint. I glanced at my phone once more and saw that it was already 5 p.m., the time when we were supposed to meet. I couldn't help but frown as I looked at his empty message board. Luciano's not the type of person to be late, so he has to be here now. But thinking that he might have had a hard time choosing a good restaurant and finding a florist, I decided to wait for him a little bit more. I blew some warm air into my hands and then placed them inside the pocket of my big coat as I wandered my eyes around, hoping to catch a glimpse of Luciano from far away. My frown deepened as everybody who walked past seemed unfamiliar. I closed my eyes and let out a deep breath as I tried to relax my mind and heart. Calm down, Talia. I whispered to myself. It's only been 10 minutes since our meeting time had passed. He might have just run into some trouble along the way. He's on his way. He's definitely on his way, right? I decided to wait for him a little longer, trying not to panic as I felt the cold air rushing up my body. I impatiently tapped my foot on the ground as the minutes passed without him by my side. I stared at the watch on my wrist and observed as the third hand moved every second. Every passing minute felt like an eternity, but at the same time, it also felt like time was moving too rapidly. Before I even knew it, already 45 minutes had passed since I'd been waiting for Luciano. I felt my heart beat faster in my chest. Now, something is definitely wrong. Luciano wouldn't leave me hanging for more than half an hour in the cold when he promised that he'd take me out on a date, right? And above all that, he still hadn't texted me anything. I anxiously pulled out my phone and tried to call him. I bit my lips as every ring passed. "Come on," I said, dialing his number once more when he still did not respond after the third attempt. I cursed under my breath and decided to call our home telephone. After a couple of rings, someone finally answered, causing me to let out a sigh of relief. "Hello?" I shakily asked. "Mommy," I heard Lucille say. "Baby," I weakly said. "Where's Grandpa Fairy?" "He's in the bathroom, Mommy." "Oh," I muttered under my breath. "Then, can you answer this question for me, baby?" "Okay, Mommy." "Is your daddy home?" She hummed, and it set some hope in my heart. I would much rather have him at home and forget about our date more than anything else. "No, Mommy," she said, causing my heart to drop. "You're on a date. So, he isn't here." I stayed silent for a moment, my ears ringing after finding out that Luciano wasn't at the house. Did he leave? I know, deep inside my heart, that he wouldn't be staying at Amari Coast forever, but I still didn't expect him to leave so soon. Is that why he has been acting strange for the past few days? Has he been planning on leaving all along? "Mommy," I heard Lucille repeatedly say on the phone. I snapped out of my thoughts as I felt a warm tear go down my face. "Yes, baby?" I asked, sniffing as I wiped my tears away. "What time will you be home?" "Later, baby. Later." With that, I turned off my phone and finally let go of the tears that were desiring to come out of my eyes. I know that I'd look fucking stupid if Luciano suddenly came to the meeting place saying sorry because he forgot we were supposed to meet at an earlier time. However, it was all futile. Because I waited for him all night long. Yet he never came.
Talia.
I didn't know what time it was. I just knew that it was dark enough that the stars were already shining in the sky. I also don't know how long I've waited for Luciano at the station. But I knew that I had waited long enough. I entered the house quietly, coughing as I went in. I couldn't feel my hands and lips from how cold they were, but frankly, I didn't care. Because it didn't compare to the numbness I was feeling in my heart. I slowly walked inside, not even noticing Grandpa Fairy's presence. "Talia, how was your date? You came back pretty late, so you must have had a great time." I stopped in my tracks when I heard his voice. However, I didn't have the strength to look to the side and look at him. I just knew that I looked fucking pathetic at the moment. He stood up from the couch to greet me but stopped when he saw that I was all alone. "But where is Luciano?" He glanced outside the window and frowned. "He's not out in the driveway too. You should call him to let him come in. It's freezing outside." I still didn't have the strength to respond. By that time, he had already noticed that something was wrong. "Talia?" he gently said. "My child?" My lips quivered as I heard his endearment. He only ever called me that name when he knew that I was upset. The last time he called me that name was when Mrs. Fairy died, so it triggered something in my heart. I thought I had already cried quite a lot at the station, but it turns out I still have some tears left in my eyes. I looked at him with glassy eyes before breaking into tears. His face twisted into that of concern, and he hurried over to give me a hug. I didn't hesitate to bury my face in his neck, breathing heavily as I tried to keep my tears at bay. "Oh, my child. What happened? Why are you crying like this?" "Grandpa," I sobbed. I couldn't form any coherent words, so I just cried it all out. "SHH. He caressed my hair. "I'm here. My child. I'm here." I continued to cry, and I was grateful that he left me be. After a while, when my eyes were finally dry, he led me over to the couch and let me sit in front of the fireplace. "Oh, you're freezing, my child," he exclaimed as he felt my hands. He got a blanket from the cabinets and wrapped it around my body. I smiled gratefully at him and snuggled into the warmth. "Wait here, okay? I'll make you some hot chocolate so you can warm yourself up." I weakly nodded my head and silently waited for him. During that silent time, I was able to calm myself down. Luciano didn't come to our date. I glanced at the wall clock and saw that it was already 11 p.m. in the afternoon. 6 hours. I waited for him for 6 straight hours. Here, Grandpa Fairy came back to the living room, placing a cup of hot chocolate in my hands. "Drink up." I drank some of the hot liquid and closed my eyes when I felt my body instantly warming up. Are you ready to talk now?" he asked in a wary tone. I sighed and placed the hot chocolate on my lap, following it with my eyes. I shook my head. "No," I honestly said. "I'm not okay. But I want to tell you what happened." He smiled and nodded his head. "I'll be here to listen." I closed my eyes and leaned back against the couch. "Luciano didn't come," I started off. He stayed silent, only waiting for me to continue speaking. "We were supposed to go out on a date today, our 4th date. But he didn't come." I knew that it was an unexpected date since he didn't make any preparations. However, I didn't mind. He went out of his way to go out of the house earlier than expected to find a good restaurant and buy me some flowers. I smiled as I remembered his voice this morning. Then, he told me that he'd meet me by the station plaza at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He nodded his head in understanding. I was so excited for this one, I chuckled and played with my fingers. Luciano just has this effect on me. No matter how many times we go on dates, no matter how many times I wake up to his face in the morning, he still manages to make my heart feel giddy every time. So, I went out of the house earlier than usual. I let out a sigh. I got to the station before 5, thinking of all the preparations that he had probably made. I was so fucking excited for this date. I couldn't wait to see him this afternoon, to see the flowers he had prepared, to eat at the restaurant he had chosen. To be honest, I wouldn't have minded if we went out to eat at a fast food joint. I'd be happy with being with him even if the place sold the crappiest food in the entire world. I chuckled. That's just how much I love him. But he never came, I said, my voice faltering in the end. I swallowed the painful lump in my throat and braved through until the end of the story. I waited and waited, and I never lost hope in my heart. I wanted to believe that he wouldn't leave me hanging for that long, but he did. I waited for 6 hours. 6 fucking hours under the cold. Almost all of the people had already left the plaza by that time. I was the only one waiting for him. I pursed my lips together to suppress the cry that threatened to come out of my chest. I didn't want to cry anymore, so I pushed through. I was only supposed to give him 3 dates, I said, my voice breaking. In the end, I couldn't help but cry once again. 3 dates to prove himself that he deserved a second chance. On the first date, I tried to stay as far away from him as possible, but he was still able to capture my heart. On the second date, I gave him a chance. And on the third date, he made me fall in love deeper with him. I let out a deep breath. This 4th date was supposed to be our break, the wall that we were supposed to break after everything we've gone through. However, in the end, we didn't break that wall. We still ended up with 3 dates in the end. Just 3 dates. I muttered under my breath. like the original plan. Grandpa Fairy captured me into an embrace once more, and I warmly welcomed it. He caressed my back, comforting me from all these overwhelming feelings. And at that time, I felt grateful that I, at least, had someone to comfort me while I was down. He broke away from the hug and made me face him. He raised his hands to wipe the tears from my cheeks before settling them on my shoulders. "Talia, listen carefully," he said in a serious voice. I swallowed my cry and nodded my head. I think I might have heard something yesterday night. And it might be the answer to Luciano's disappearance.
Luciano.
A table for two at 5:30 p.m. under the surname Romano, the waiter confirmed, scribbling something in his notebook.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr. Romano. See you later at the reserved time. Thank you, I smiled politely, then went out of the restaurant. I glanced down at my watch and saw that it was already 4 p.m. Just on time. I still have some time to buy some flowers for Talia. I found a small florist shop with rustic flower pieces on display. I immediately knew that Talia would love them, so I went inside and started looking for the perfect piece.
Good afternoon, sir. Anything that caught your eye?
The florist asked. I wandered my eyes around until it landed on a sunflower and daisy combination. It was spaced with baby's breath flowers, and it just reminded me of Talia so much. That one, I pointed to the piece.
Nice choice, sir.
The florist smiled. Let me wrap this up for you real quick. Feel free to sit down or look around while I do so. I nodded my head and sat down on one of the seats. It didn't take long before the florist finished wrapping the flowers. I paid for it and went out of the shop after saying my thanks. I smiled as I looked at the flower in my hands. The yellow looked so vibrant against the dull, cold weather. It reminded me so much of Talia, my sunshine, my light amidst the darkness in my heart. I glanced at my watch and saw that I still had some time left before our designated meeting time, so I decided to walk to the plaza station. At around 4:45 p.m., I finally made it to the station with some time to spare. I smiled widely as I saw Talia from a distance. She was already at the station, waiting for me. She looked so beautiful in her winter clothes, and I just wanted to run to her to pepper her with sweet kisses. I walked faster towards where she was, and when I was only a few meters away, I was about to call her name. She wasn't looking my way, so she still hadn't noticed my presence. As I was about to call her name, I felt a strong force coming from behind me. They placed a cloth that smelled strongly of chloroform right under my nose. I tried to fight back using my strength, but it was already too late. My vision started blurring, and my strength quickly diminished. I reached out my hand toward Talia's direction, hoping she would look at me just once. I shook my head to stop my vision from being completely black.
Talia.
I tried to scream, but it turned out to be a pathetic utterance. And with that, I succumbed to darkness.
Sometime later.
I opened my eyes when I felt a cold and wet sensation cascade down my body. I tried to wipe my forehead with the back of my hand to get rid of the wet sensation, but I couldn't move my arm farther. Only the sound of clanging chains resounded in the room. My head felt like it was being weighed down by a ton, and my eyes needed some time to adjust before I could see what was ahead of me. Finally, a familiar voice said, "I can't believe you've been knocked out for 4 hours just because of a hit on the head." My eyes finally adjusted to the dark room, and I could now see the man standing right in front of me. I chuckled coldly before shaking my head.
Father!
I said in a deadly tone, narrowing my eyes at him. His expression hardened as he leaned his elbows against his lap. "Do not look at me like that," he said through gritted teeth. "I would look at you how I want, especially after what you had done. You do not deserve my respect." He swiftly stood up from his seat and raised his hand, bringing it down to my cheek. The slap resounded in the small, dark room, and although I had already anticipated it, it still hurt like a bitch. I pushed my tongue against my cheek before spitting the blood in my mouth down on the ground. I glared up at him and pursed my lips together. "Why did you bring me here?" He scoffed before sitting back down in his seat. "Isn't it obvious? You neglected your duties. I had to do what I had to do as the former Don of the Cosa Nostra." Exactly. I said. You're the former Don. I am the current Don. You do not get to question how I run the Cosa Nostra, especially since I haven't done anything wrong. Our factions are still functioning well, and I've left point people to take care of certain matters. I've never neglected my duties as the Don. You're just fucking mad at me for being efficient at my work even when I'm away when you clearly couldn't handle that when you were the Don. His jaw unconsciously tightened, and I saw his fists clenching in anger too. I was grateful that he didn't punch me right then and there because I didn't think I could handle any more hits. At least I didn't leave my post. I was there the entire time, and I didn't let myself be distracted by trivial things, especially love. I can't believe you went out of your way just to meet that lowly guard of yours, he said in a disgusted tone. Yeah, I weakly nodded my head. You never left your post. You never disassociated your work with your personal life, not even when Mom died, not even when Renee died. That's how good of a Don you are, I said, the pain in my heart that I had kept for so long being resurfaced through my words.
And that's how bad of a father you are.
His dark expression became more sullen as I said those words, but it quickly disappeared. He went back to his usual cold, dark expression. Because you can't be both, he said. You can't be a good father and a good Don at the same time.
You can,
I said with conviction. And I'm going to be the living proof of that. He snapped his gaze at me.
I have a child,
I said. His face twisted into that of surprise, so I knew that he wasn't aware of that yet.
A child?
He exclaimed, sitting up from his seat, the chair toppling backward, resonating in the small room. Yes, a child, someone I love very much. I went to Amari Coast not only to win back Talia's heart, but also to reunite with my child. I realized that I don't have to be a Don all of the time. I have a life outside the Mafia, and the more time I spend with my family, the more I realize that maybe I don't want this life at all.
A fucking child,
he muttered under his breath, probably not even listening to what I had just said. Do you know how big of a distraction a child is? Especially at your age? You should be focusing on making more riches at that age. I don't fucking care about money. I spat. My family is the most important for me right now. He sighed and massaged the bridge of his nose. And so? What is this child of yours? What's its name? Some hope swelled in my heart when he asked that question. It made me wonder if he could accept this news and leave me be.
Lucille.
I smiled with a mere mention of her name. My daughter's name is Lucille. Lucille, he exclaimed, his expression twisting into one of disgust. A daughter? A fucking girl? I frowned. You know, I was considering for a second just to accept this preposterous child of yours, he said, so that there will be an heir to the title, but you're telling me that your child is a girl? He scoffed and shook his head in disbelief. I, too, couldn't say anything because I was beyond disgusted with his way of thinking. No, he said. I can't accept this. I can't let you go back to that family of yours. Father, I said in a loud voice, trying to escape the heavy chains wrapped around my wrists. I'm keeping you here until you learn your lesson.